Good evening, I'm Bob Baldacci and welcome to Baldacci on Business. We are not having our Pitch Me show. This is our last show of the season, and I put together what I consider to be the best and the brightest here in the business community of southern Maine and Maine in general to talk about the Maine economy and what's working, what isn't, what's it like to do business in this state, and what we can do as a state to try to improve things. So I'd first like to introduce our panel. My good friend, F. Lee Bailey, who, although he has an incredibly distinguished career as a criminal defense lawyer, he's also had a very impressive career in business, owning and operating a helicopter company, was on the board of Chris Craft, and has been involved with a number of businesses here in this state that I'm very familiar with and helping to guide them. And Lee, thank you very much for being on this show.
Always a pleasure.
Corky Ellis, the founder and CEO of Kepware, which is an absolutely fascinating company. And I thought he only had 40 employees, and he told me just a few minutes ago you're up to 110 here in Portland.
Yep.
And we're going to know a little bit more about your company and how you got started here. Sandy Spalding, my good friend. Sandy has had a long and distinguished career in business. He was recently elected chair of the MTI, Maine Technology Institute, and he's president and CEO of Hodgson Yacht Services, and has a long career in the boat industry, former president of Hinckley. And Mike Caron, who grew up in the paper industry, grew up in Westbrook, and had been with Sappi, but has a long career in the paper industry, and has been a longtime advocate for taking that industry and adding value with products such as label manufacturing, and you had Lamtech, and now you've got TrackTech. Very successful operator and has some very, very definite opinions of what we should be doing as a state, particularly as it relates to the paper industry. So, gentlemen, thank you for being on the show. I'd like to just ask, from your perspectives, what's working in Maine and what isn't? What are the three things that we should focus on as a state? And try to be brief because we only have a half an hour and there's a lot of ground I want to cover here on this show. But Lee, what's your feeling?
I'll give you two because I intend to meet with the governor and offer up my expertise in these two areas. The first is we get a lot of people in prison costing 60 grand a year who could be out working under supervision. Maine has the best prison population in the country in terms of manageability, and that's a step that should have been taken a long time ago, should be taken now. The second is Maine has a desperate shortage of skilled machinists. They could be making a lot of products and exporting them, and although we do have some training schools, we don't have an apprentice system where someone can go from a graduate student to a machinist. And there are examples all around us. I'm going to try and acquaint the governor with those and see if we can't bite into that syndrome, because it could make a big difference.
The VOTECs and the community colleges aren't doing that?
They can bring a person through law school. They can't teach him what to do in court. For that, you've got to get in and get your feet wet. You've got to get some street smarts, and that's the gap that Maine can't bridge, and therefore those students are leaving the state.
Okay, thank you. Corky, from your perspective?
For me, the key thing to focus on would be education, education, education. We are a technology company, and we have a very hard time recruiting enough top people with the skills that we're looking for.
Tell our audience a little bit about Kepware, how you started it and what it is.
Kepware writes software for automating manufacturing processes. So we're very technically oriented. We're involved throughout the world. 60% of our sales are international. And we are wherever you have a factory that you're trying to automate. That's what our software does. And so we need programmers. We need technicians. We need QC inspectors. We need technically competent people who are very literate in math and science and programming. And the University of Maine last year in our programs graduated 50 students. And there are jobs that there are many more jobs than that that are going empty, that need people. And there are not enough kids graduating in these disciplines.
Wow. Okay, that's good. And I know you put your money where your mouth is in terms of
We've
helping.
built our company kind of on the back of UMaine's engineering program.
Right.
And we've got a scholarship program and so on.
Excellent, excellent. Sandy, you've been involved in the boat industry, marine industry for a long time here in Maine. What are your perceptions? What do you think we do right, wrong, and what are the one or two or three things that we should be doing from your perspective?
Well, the skill set that we're looking for in the boat business isn't at the engineering level. You know, it's more at the community college level. But we have the same problem. We have a very difficult time finding skilled tradesmen in the boat industry. You know, one of the reasons is it is a feast or famine business a little bit. There's peaks and valleys. So I know Hinckley was down to 35 employees 4 years ago building boats. They're up to 400. Now they're grabbing those people from all kinds of places, and it's very difficult actually. They're not trained. At Hodge and Booth Bay, we have the same problem. So just finding resources and the ability to train more people, and as Corky said, education. I would just add, I think one of the strengths of Maine is the communities. We have great communities, and we have a great lifestyle here. You know, it's a good quality of life, and that does attract people, but it's not enough. I just say it's not enough. You know, we don't have, I would say we just don't have enough people. We don't have enough activity. We don't have enough business activity. And I think one of the things I hope we talk about today is ways that we can bring more activity
That's exactly
into
right.
the state of Maine.
That's exactly right. Thank you, Sandy. Mike, I mean, you and I have talked a lot about the paper industry. You've tried to work with a number of companies along the way, from Fraser to Great Northern, you name it, to try to get them to move to more value-added technologies. Talk about a little bit from your perspective where you've seen Maine succeed or fail and what needs to be done.
Well, I think if I had to sum it up into one issue, it's a consistent strategy. Okay, back to your point, more activity. Maine is 1.2, 1.3 million people. You're not going to have the same level of activity that you have in a lot of other states. So if you're going to create a meaningful business enterprise, a lot of the value you create is going to go to other states or other parts of the country. Maine's on the end of the country. So anything you make that's a product, other than, you know, if it's software, which travels easy, but if you're going to make a product that has bulk or substance to it and you're going to ship it somewhere, it better have enough added value to be able to withstand the cost of freight. And cost of shipping things is not going to go down. And then the other piece is, you know, I'll be my typical broken record. We have 17 million acres of trees. What the hell are we going to do with them? You know, that's 17 acres of trees for every man, woman, and child lives in the state. Seems to me we ought to be able to come up with a good idea of what to do with those and help to generate some business from them. So,
And you've tried to do that. You've been involved with land
have tried
tech
and continue to be involved in some projects that may
Correct.
go to that end. But, you know, it's pretty simple. We've been in the news a lot recently with the issues around Great Northern and the tax benefits and so forth. And to me, all those problems stem from the same thing, which is an inconsistent strategy. We were talking about MTI earlier. Very complex to qualify for some of their grants and loans and so forth. You need a simpler way to evaluate things. And the Great Northern problem, in my perspective, was one of the people involved needed to have a plan of what they were going to do with that site. Just continuing to do what 3 other companies had gone bankrupt doing before was not a plan. I would never have loaned them a penny on that strategy because it wasn't a strategy. And that, to me, is the issue with the whole state of Maine.
Excellent, excellent. Lee?
In order to put Maine in perspective, and I think in terms of time served in Maine, I'm the senior guy here by far. I came in 1933. By the end of that year, when I was 1 year old, I had fallen in love with the state of Maine. mostly for emotional reasons, but some for solid ones. What has Maine got? It's got the most beautiful coastline anywhere in the world. It's got good, solid people who are trainable, and with the usual number of exceptions that wind up in jail, trustworthy and dependable. It can output with any workers in America if it has the training and the machinery. Now, Maine could structure a program as others have done, particularly those that live in unattractive geographical sites, to take a kid coming out of high school or junior high school and say, all right, we'll do a contract with you. We'll give you some training. We'll put you to work in a company as an apprentice. You'll get paid. We'll finance your house to get you going. You, meanwhile, will sign a contract to serve so many years in Maine. That could pull people in and keep them here, particularly now when it's tough to go out and finance a house and so forth. Anything short of that, they're going to go to school in Maine, go live in New Hampshire and work somewhere else.
And that's what we've seen a lot of that happening. That's correct. That's an interesting idea.
So if I'm put in charge of world headquarters, those are some of the things I will do.
Okay. Corky, just to continue, I mean, everybody seems to have a common theme here you know, we've got the jobs, we have the opportunities, but we don't have the workers with the right skills. And I know you have done everything you can do personally with your company to try to fill that gap. But as we look at at Sandy's business and look at the paper industry and other natural resource-based industries, are you suggesting that more companies ought to put their money where their mouth is and help with scholarships or come up with a program like Lee just mentioned?
Yes. Yes, I am suggesting that.
Okay.
And there are a lot of companies trying to do that. What I'm really suggesting, though, is that the legislature and the governor need to get together and make this the highest priority that faces them. They're talking about welfare fraud and lots of issues like that I know are important. Tax cuts are a big subject that everybody's talking about. For me and my company or our company, it won't make a difference. What makes a difference is brilliant young people. Why is Cambridge, Massachusetts, Palo Alto, California, and Raleigh-Durham, why are those places so successful in technology? It's not that they have low taxes. It's that they have smart young kids and lots of them. And that's what we need to do. And they are not focused on it. The governor's not, and the legislature's not, on both sides.
Well, Sandy, excellent point, and Lee's nodding in agreement. Sandy, you're close to the governor. Would you agree with that?
I think some of the issues you mentioned get us distracted. I actually think that what Governor LePage is trying to do to make this a more business-friendly state is the right thing. I think sometimes the message gets lost in these static issues, I'll call them, but we need to attract more capital and more business to the state. I sometimes refer back to when I served on your brother's Business Advisory Committee in the early 2000s.
And you're a Republican. So.
I'm a Republican. But I was on this business committee where we were trying to improve the better tax, business equipment tax, refund that. That was like the big thing. And I was like, why aren't we talking about capital gains, state tax, real tax issues? I'm not calling tax cuts. I mean, I don't like to refer to it that way, but just tax policies that attract capital and entrepreneurs and startups. I think it's just an area that makes sense that we should be looking at.
Mike, you've dealt with some major paper companies making investments, not making investments, deciding to make investments in other states. Do you feel that the income tax or tax policy is critical, or is it?
Well, the paper industry, obviously, a huge capital expense. So,
right.
Obviously,
the better tax.
Right.
Is the
so,
big one.
yeah, the big one for them.
But that's just the paper industry.
Right.
Yeah.
It's as we sit here and talk, it strikes me. I'm a big proponent for simplicity. So, if Maine really wanted to put itself on the map as a quote business-friendly community. And I won't even sit here and say it's a tax cut or it's welfare reform or it's this or it's that. But I would say if we could write our tax code on a Cameo card, and we were the first state to have a Cameo card tax return for all income, I bet you'd get more attention from businesses because you simplified the problem and you took it out of the hands of the politicians, most of which nobody trusts anyway. And you told me to say what I think.
Yep, I did.
H&R Block will cry.
They may cry, but we have 74,000 page federal tax system. That's ridiculous. In the state, I don't know how many pages, but if you could simplify it and at the same time flatten it and make it more equitable, and then redirect all those resources that are used to run the system as it exists today, I think you'd get a lot more attention from business than anything else you could do.
Bob, and I intend to lay this right in the governor's lap if given a chance. When you have a concrete example of something that works, to run off and indulge in all kind of speculations and politically popular, unpopular tax cuts, Governor Page is a lame duck. He doesn't have to answer to anyone. He doesn't have to run again. He just needs to get done what he can get done.
Correct.
Shining example. A fellow who lives in York, Maine is named Marshall Jarvis. He owns a very sophisticated machine shop in Rochester, New Hampshire. He has to train his own people from high school right on up. Through the darkest days of the recession, he ran 3 shifts. His customers are Boeing, Grumman, General Motors, and Ford. He makes machines that make parts. And yet he chooses to live in York because it's beautiful and pay taxes in York. We could replicate that for people that live here. And although you may not repeal the income tax, you can certainly give what has been an effective way to finance companies, tax credits for those who will agree to stay and put in. If they pull up and run out, the taxes become due.
Has he ever thought of opening up an operation in Maine, Lee?
His would be difficult to move, but he has thought of assisting the state of Maine in opening similar operations here, and that would be a great contribution.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, you were very clear, Corky, with your remarks in terms of where the tax policy rests in terms of whether or not it's going to make or break your business. I know it's important, but your focus is getting trained, skilled workers.
We would have, instead of having 110 employees, we would have 113 if the taxes were lower.
Okay.
That is not the issue for us. The issue is quadruple the number of kids coming out of Skowhegan High School who are staying in math and going into technical professions in college, studying things and then going into professions. That's the issue for us. If that happens, that's what will make Kepware grow. I talked to a Fortune 20 company once, and I said, why haven't you moved a division here? This is a great state. Everybody wants to live here. He said, could I hire 300 engineers tomorrow? He didn't say, oh, your tax rate is too high.
Right.
He didn't say that. He said, could I hire 300 engineers? That's the issue.
Yeah, and you don't feel that the governor and the legislature are...
Yeah, I didn't mean to pick on the governor.
No, but
he's doing a lot of hard work. I get it.
Politicians in general are just not...
It's not what people are talking about and focused on.
Is that the biggest challenge that you face in your business?
Without a doubt.
It is.
Nothing's close.
And
What I hear coming out of Augusta is bickering.
Yeah.
It's just plain bickering and sniping.
Both sides.
I would
Both
hope,
sides.
Also,
Yeah, both sides. I would hope we could rise above that. We have not.
Yeah, Sandy?
Well, as a society at some level, body politic, we're conflicted about, everyone's conflicted about the way life should be. I love living in a state where a plane emergency lands on the major highway in the middle of the city and doesn't hit a car. I mean, I like that. Okay, I drive down to Massachusetts where there's a lot of activity and I get stressed out. Yeah. So there is something about living in a place like this. And I think therefore we are conflicted about our development and growth plants. There are people in Maine that do not want to change.
They don't want any growth.
They don't want any growth. I mean, they're not pro-development. They're not necessarily pro-growth.
That's true.
And I don't know. So that's just part of the process of evolving. But
That's the prototypical Mainer who, being asked for directions by someone with an out-of-state plate, says, "I don't think you can get there from here."
it's right.
Mike, were you?
Just for the record, I'm not politically conflicted. I know exactly what I think and what I want.
Well, so do I. The body politic is confusing.
I understand. But the political correctness that the world is stuck on right now, Corky and I were talking earlier, you want more kids to be excited about math and science. I mean, my kids pursued those backgrounds, my older kids. They did it because they heard it from both their mother and their father, forever. But you're going to have to make it exciting. You're going to have to make it fun. Mm-hmm. That also means that they're going to be winners and losers. That also means you're going to let somebody get an A and somebody get an F. And somebody gets an F is going to have to go into another class and work harder. And somebody gets an A is going to be celebrated for getting an A.
Right.
And if you want people to do the hard thing, then you got to give them a reason to do the hard thing. They have to see that they could lead to an exciting career in the future. Mm-hmm. By the time they get done high school and you say, gee, you got to be better in math and science, too late.
Yep.
So you're going to have to go back to the grade school and you're going to have to make it fun and exciting and rewarding. And I remember one of my kids had a teacher in the 5th grade, and he used to call it the wall of honor. And you had to take these incredibly difficult tests. Now, not everybody had to take the test. You had to decide that you wanted to do it, but then you needed to get 100. Mm-hmm. You could get 99. You didn't get on the wall. Mm-hmm. The notion was, and these are kids in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade doing this. Yeah. To me, you're teaching a kid that success is its own reward. Mm-hmm. And you're never going to get the people that Corky wants to hire unless you make school its own reward. That doing the hard thing, science, doing the hard thing, math, becomes fulfilling.
Very, very well said. Guys, we have 5 minutes, and we could do a show with each one of you alone, and it would be absolutely fascinating. So again, thank you. We've got a few minutes left, and I'd like to kind of talk about solutions. Okay, we've been talking about some of the problems here. How do we come up with something that the governor or the legislature or the people in this state can say, okay, yes, that makes sense. Let's do it to help turn the state around. What do we need to do? I mean, you've all talked about basically the primary issue has been getting skilled workers, getting people excited about education in the right subjects where there's some demand for jobs. Lee, you've mentioned some specific things, but I'd like to talk about what's...
They've got to be incentive-based programs.
Correct.
That mean what they say. You don't come in here, take goodies for 3 years, and then go to Nevada.
Right.
You pay your dues. And when it's like serving in the Navy, if you come in for 4 years, you stay. Or you go to Portsmouth Naval Prison.
Well, sometimes companies don't make it, and they get credits.
I'm not talking about a company not making it.
What are you
I'm talking
about?
With a covenant with the state of Maine. And for this, I believe federal money could become available. You don't pledge you'll work for one company or another company. You pledge that you'll work in the state of Maine so long as jobs are available in that specialty. And when you've done your time, you want to go to Nevada, that's fine. But we've got to get the benefit back. That's the whole smoky issue of these investment tax credits. Pick on the ones that didn't work and say the program stinks, the people stink, and ignore the ones that did work.
Good point. Good point. Again, your focus has been the apprentice program. That's something that you feel would have a lot of merit.
It's a training program that brings people by whatever route to a skill level that is employable and productive. That's my definition. And you don't go from tyro to expert by falling out of bed.
Right. Now, Corky, you're not from Maine.
No.
And you decided to build your company here in Maine. You could be anywhere in the world. Why? And what do we need to do to get more companies like Kepware to locate here? And be specific.
If you can be
We
anywhere,
only got 3 minutes
if you
left.
could be anywhere in the world, why would you not want to be in Maine? That's
a
why I
great-
landed here. My wife and I looked at each other and said, "That's where we want to be." If I think that we as a state have to invest more in education. I am not saying that the education system is perfect. I am not siding with administration of the state. I'm not siding with teachers' unions. This is a very complicated issue, and all of the groups hold a lot of blame for the failure of the system, of not generating enough technical people. All I'm recommending is that we as a state, parents, politicians, and business people focus on it and realize that it is, I think, the most important issue facing us for economic development. We need to focus on it.
Excellent. Sandy, would you agree? And what's your perspective? We've got 2 minutes left.
I'm not the person to comment on how to make this education system
not
better. It clearly needs, that's a big topic.
Yeah.
And,
But you're running a business here.
well, we have training issues, and we need to apprentice people. I'd kind of like the private sector to do as much as they can on their own, if possible.
Right.
But certainly look for a balanced, healthy. I would wish people could trust each other more. It seems like that's just not enough of that going around. Not enough goodwill. We
Mike?
need more goodwill.
More goodwill. Okay. Mike, Karen, we've got about 30 or 40 seconds left, believe it or not. But
Solve all the problems.
I'll go back to my original thing. I think a lot of progress could be made if we knew what the target was. And by that I mean Maine needs a vision, a consistent plan, a strategy by which everything we do, education,
Is all
what
tied
we do with
into it.
tax money, is all measured against, so that we know it's consistent with the philosophy that exists in the state to take us to where we can be successful.
guys, thank you. We're out of time. This has been a great show, way too fast, but thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Bob.